Way to go, Tic Tac!
That's how you punch.
Wakanda forever!
You wouldn't have heard of me.
Let me put you on hold.
Dance off, bro! He's a friend from work!
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome back to another movie review. Today we are going over and ranking Moana 2. Moana 2, released in 2024, directed by David G. Derrick Jr., Jason Hand, and Donna Ledoux Miller. After receiving an unexpected call from her wayfinding ancestors, Moana must journey to the far seas of Oceania and into dangerous, long-lost waters for an adventure unlike anything she's ever faced. Now, I was going into this movie very skeptical. I did not know what they were going to do with the sequel. I didn't really know how they could continue the story based off of how the first one ended off. So I didn't know what to expect. I fully expected the worst. But I was very pleasantly surprised. I thought that they did a really good job continuing this universe and did a great job of connecting it to the first movie to make it feel like a continuation more of just a sequel. So without further ado, let's just get right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. Now, I thought the plot of this movie was pretty good. I didn't really have anything bad to say about it. I do really like how they continued it off from the first movie. I feel like instead of feeling just like a sequel to a movie, just another thing happening in the same universe, it is a continuation of the story in the first movie, which, again, I didn't think they would even do that because I didn't know what they could continue, but they found a way and it worked. So plot-wise, I think it is an intriguing and interesting story to follow, and a very surprising one at that. The second essential aspect is attraction. Overall, I was very attracted to this movie. I was entertained. Nothing really bothered me about it. I felt like everything I was enjoying. I do think that a lot of the comedy they used in it was more directed towards kids and wasn't as funny as it was in the first one. Obviously, Hey, the chicken, the rooster, he was still absolutely hilarious, and that, even though that is meant for kids, I still found that very funny. But all other jokes I felt weren't as general audience viewed. They were more directed towards kids under the age of 10. So it works when obviously this is a kids movie. It's supposed to be directed towards them. I just liked that in the first movie, as an adult, I could still enjoy it to basically the same level. I felt like I didn't get that same experience in this movie. But otherwise, I mean, just the story itself was very attractive. It was very entertaining. I was locked into the movie the whole time. It felt like time just flew by. So I have to say, attraction-wise, it does its job. It does its job and it does it well. I just wish I enjoyed it a little more. The third essential aspect is theme. I think the main theme and message of this movie overall would be teamwork. There is a few other messages towards the end and the beginning, but for the majority of the movie, it focused a lot on teamwork and the family that stands behind you. Because a lot of the things that Moana had to go through here, if she didn't have her team behind her, would be very hard. But instead of her team was very sporadic and weren't really working well together. But once they all realized their end goal to work together, it made the whole mission way easier. So I do have to say, teamwork is probably the message that was most of this movie. Otherwise, I wouldn't really know a specific one to point to. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. So just like in the first Moana, I feel like the characters had great chemistry and great dialogue with each other. For the most part, there isn't any big thing that bothered me with the characters talking, and they did feel real, so that's good. And it is very important, since this movie is animated, you need to have good dialogue in order to make the characters convincing, because you're acting with your voice. So I think just like in the first Moana, they did a really good job with that, and there wasn't really any conversations that didn't feel real. And I do like that in this movie they had a little bit of that fourth wall breaking. Both Maui and the old guy that were on Moana's team had a few lines that were clearly directed at the audience. Like Maui, when he said, called her princess again, she said that she is not a princess. And he said that a lot of people would disagree looking at the camera, because a lot of people think that she is a Disney princess, even though she isn't in the movie. And also the old man complaining that they're always singing in these movies, which I agree. But it's just cool to have those kind of dialogue in a movie like this to kind of break away from just watching the movie in general. The fifth essential aspect is acting. Now, I'm going to be talking about the same two actors that I talked about in Moana 1 in my first review for that. And that is Auli'i Cravalho, who played Moana, just like in the first one, she felt very natural in this role. She felt like she was playing herself. She had great chemistry with all the other characters. She knew how to put the proper emotion into Moana's character to make her feel real. And Dwayne Johnson, who played Maui, he did the same thing. I mean, Dwayne Johnson is just Maui, just without the hair. I said that in the first one. I'm saying it again. They look similar. He sounds good with Dwayne's voice. So I just think that that's like almost a perfect casting for the character. So overall, the acting, just like in the first one, was good. They knew how to play their characters well. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. Now, this is one thing that I have to say Moana 2 is better than Moana 1 at, and that is the cinematography. I think the movie looks just as good, if not better, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the emotions. I felt like in the first movie, I didn't have I had some of an emotional connection, but not to the level I had as in Moana 2. In Moana 2, I actually felt really emotional in a lot of the scenes. There was some scenes that I actually did tear up, that I actually felt this investment in the characters and was sad when something sad happened and was happy when something happy. I wanted the story to end well. I had that same feeling in Moana, but not as much as in this one. So I do have to say they did a great job of upping the cinematic value of this movie. The seventh essential aspect is editing. Now, this movie is an hour and 40 minutes long. Just like the first one, they're both similar lengths. It's well done. It shouldn't need to be that long. I feel like if you're not trying to break any records or get any awards, you shouldn't really push your movie to the limit, because there could be a lot of dead space and a lot of unnecessary scenes in that kind of movie. But this one kept it at an hour 40, kept it under that 2-hour mark, and they used their time really well. I feel like they knew that they already had a lot of development in the first one, so they didn't have to develop as much, but they still added that background just for anyone that watched this before the first one to be able to still understand what's kind of happening, which I'm glad that they did. And overall, I just think the pacing of this movie is really well done, so I do have to say that's a pretty big thumbs up. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. Now, this is where I was disappointed, because as you guys know, if you've watched my channel, I am not a fan of singing in movies unless it is very necessary. Like, for example, the main character being a singer or songwriter of some kind, so music is a big part of the movie. But this is just, obviously, all Disney movies do this, especially Disney's princess movies. There is singing going on consistently throughout the whole movie, and I never really have been a big fan of that. I feel like it takes me away, because why are they singing? I don't understand why you can't just have a normal conversation. Why do you have to sing it to them? And in the first Moana, it didn't bother me that much, because they were very catchy songs. They got stuck in my head. I was fine with hearing them. And in this one, again, it didn't pull me out as much as others do, but it still did pull me out. I feel like the songs weren't as catchy. They weren't as necessary in this as they were in the first one, which was a big disappointment, because I expected, at least if Moana 2 doesn't have the best story, at least the singing will be and the soundtrack will be on par, but it was not, sadly. The ninth essential aspect is directing. Now, I think it's the director's job to take these previous 8 essential aspects, put them together to make a movie that's worth watching. And the directors of this movie were David G. Derrick Jr., Jason Hand, and Donna Ledoux Miller. And I think that they did a really good job, especially since this is the only movie that any of them have directed. This is the first and last that they have done. Or not last, but most recent. And I'm surprised, because honestly, I felt like if I knew that Moana 2 was directed by people that never directed a movie, and they're basing it off of a story that they obviously didn't direct or write for, so I thought it would definitely be a blow up. But they did a good job. They definitely surprised me. This movie was much better than expected, and for them being all 3 first timers, they really put their heads together and made a movie that is definitely worth watching. And the 10th essential aspect is time. Now, I think this movie will stand the test of time for more reasons than one. I feel like as a movie in itself, it is good to the point where it will stand the test of time. I feel like people will know about Moana 2, but especially because it is a continuation of Moana, which I definitely think will stand the test of time. A lot of people love that movie. It is a lot of people's top tier in Disney princess movies or Disney movies in general, because it is well put together, it is well animated, it has a good story. So I think that obviously if that will stand the test of time, this one will, because of course, it's not a standalone sequel. It is a really good continuation of the first movie. So if one does, the other does. That's just how it works. So it definitely will stand the test of time. Now, onto the reviews. So, Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it a 62%, Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it an 87%, and IMDb gave it a 70%. Yeah, so these are all spread out all across the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which doesn't surprise me. This movie definitely will have mixed rapport. I feel like people are just basing their reviews off of the first one, saying it's not as good, so let's tank it, or thinking that it's really, really good, better than the first one, and raising it. I feel like 87 is too high and 62 is too low. I want to say 70 is a good range. I think it would be more like 75. I feel like Moana is an 80, and it is slightly worse than the first one. So I'd have to say probably like 80 or like 79 would be a good place to put it. And finally, the rankings. So in 2024, it's going to be 6th, above Speak No Evil and below The Fall Guy. Now, it's above Speak No Evil because I feel like, obviously, this movie is for a broader audience than Speak No Evil is. Of course, it is targeted more towards kids, but as an adult, I still enjoyed it. Not to the level of the first one, but I still enjoyed it. And Speak No Evil is definitely targeted towards my kind of group, where it's at least older to understand more and be more invested in the movie. And Speak No Evil is cinematically really, really good. I just feel like this movie doesn't have as good of cinematics as Speak No Evil, but I feel like it is a broader kind of cinematography where it not only looks really, really good, but it gets you invested as well. And I think the story is a little bit more interesting in Moana too than Speak No Evil, because thrillers obviously have an interesting story, but not full. They don't try to make it a very, very interesting plot. They try to make it more of a suspenseful and fearful kind of plot. So I think overall, in the grand scheme of things, Moana 2 is slightly better. It's not by much. And it's below The Fall Guy because The Fall Guy is meant for entertainment. This movie was entertaining, but The Fall Guy was much more entertaining. And cinematography-wise, it was at an even level. So I just feel like if they have the same cinematography, but one is more entertaining, I'm gonna lean more towards that one, and that happens to be The Fall Guy. So it wasn't really something I thought about. It was just, for me, it was clear. Yeah, Fall Guy is better, and that's why I put it there on the list. In the 2020s, it's gonna be the same situation. It's gonna be in 6th, above Speak No Evil and below The Fall Guy. So I'm not gonna explain why. It's kind of unnecessary since I just explained it. And in all time, it's going to be 18th, above Speak No Evil again, but below X-Men First Class. So again, I'm not going to explain why it's above Speak No Evil since I explained it in the 2024, but it's below X-Men First Class because, again, both have really good cinematography. I feel like I like the characters more in X-Men First Class. Of course, I have that Marvel bias, but I just think there's more characters and more character development to see due to that fact. And because it is really just the first time all the X-Men are coming together, so that story is very interesting, and every single time I watch it, even though I know what happens, I still want to watch more. So I just think that movie is just a little better put together than Moana 2 is. That's all I have for Moana 2. How did you guys like it? Did you think that it was better than the first one? Did you think it was worse? Where do you think I should have put it on this list? Definitely let me know in the comments what you thought of it. If you want to see someone that does a similar style of movie reviewing, check out my best friend, Mr. Majoritarian. He does the same thing with the ranking and reviews and just all the 10 essential aspects. So if you like that with a more cinematic twist, he does focus a lot on the cinematography. And of course, he obviously has a different point of view. We have two different brains, so he would have a completely different list than I do. So definitely go check him out. His link will always be in my description. And if you guys enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to comment what movie you want me to review next. I hope you guys have an amazing night. Peace out.